Hello guys, and welcome to my Stamina Nightblade damage over time build. This is a really sweet build. Now I know what you're thinking, damage over time? That doesn't sound Stamina Nightblade-y. Well, this is like burst damage over time. Look at this! Look at this dot burst! Oh my word! That's right. It's like applying a ton, to be exact, 7 damage over time abilities in 2 attacks. So many dots, so many dots. So this is a really sweet build. It has some pretty interesting gameplay in Cyrodiil. It hard counters very tanky targets. Anything that has a high armor and HP value absolutely struggles against this build. So it's a really interesting spec to play on the Nightblade because it makes the tanks that a Nightblade normally has trouble killing kind of prime targets for him. And finally, we are a Stamina Nightblade, so we get to play that super trolly kite game that Stamina Nightblade is oh so well known for. Anyhow, guys, I really hope you enjoy this build video. We've got a lot of gameplay footage to go over here. I mean, we've got a whopping, I think, 20 minutes of footage in this one, so it's nice and long, lots of stuff for you guys to look at. If you guys enjoyed what you saw here and you want to see more, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll keep the builds coming. I'm thinking maybe Hybrid Sorcerer next. Maybe even a Zerg Bombing Magicka Warden. I thought that would be really sweet, just because Deep Fissure is so strong. But anyway, feel free to hit those buttons, guys. Enjoy the footage. Let's jump into the build. All right, guys, let's take a look at the build. So we are a Khajiit Nightblade, of course, Khajiit being an awesome choice for a Nightblade. I would also recommend Wood Elf or a Redguard or even Orc for Nightblade. All of them are good choices. For this particular build, I've thought Khajiit was the best bet. And that's kind of even because of the health recovery passive they get, but we'll jump into that when we look at the build a little bit more. So taking a look at our max stats here, they are quite low. This build does not have really impressive looking max stats, unfortunately. Looking at that maximum stamina especially. But that's part of the build. I mean, this build hits a lot harder than this stat page would let on for the damage. So let's keep taking a look at it. Now, I am only Undaunted 7, so I am missing out on 3% across the board for my max stats as well. So if we had our Undaunted fully maxed out, we'd be looking at 24k HP, 12.5k Magicka, and 27.1 or 2k stamina on this build. So not super terribly high max stats. Taking a look at the regen, however, we have some crazy amounts of recovery. So let's buff up real quick so you can see our fully buffed recoveries. We've got 1400 Magicka recovery, 1300 health, and 2100 stamina recovery on this build. Awesome amounts of recovery, and that is going to play into huge amounts of survivability on this build. Now, I know a lot of people like to play really high recovery, and 2100 might not seem that high to you. I personally play lower recovery specs, so 2k is quite on the high end for me, but it does give this build a lot of sustain and your ability to pretty much just keep going on and on until you get locked down in a situation that you can't escape. So we take a look at the weapon damage. We're coming in at 2,686. This is unbuffed, and we are using Flying Blade for our weapon damage buff. So we have about 3.1 to 3.2k weapon damage on this spec. Not a massive amount of weapon damage, as you can see here. But our weapon crit, however, is pretty beefy, coming in at 57.8. Now, something to keep in mind is that we should be running dual axes on our front bar. Now, I didn't get the axe drop for the Viper axe, unfortunately, so I was not able to run dual axes on this build. I do have a dagger, so that's going to inflate my crit just a little bit more at the cost of giving up a higher chance to proc the axe bleed. Taking a look at our physical spell resistance, it's actually pretty decent. We're running a defending bow, so on our bow bar we have almost 1500 physical and spell resist, and then when we cloak up, we're looking at 20k physical spell resist across the board on the bow bar with 2k crit resist. So a great amount of resists on our bow bar here, and that's going to help make up for the fact that we're not going to have a huge amount of healing power on this spec, and that's a big part of the health recovery as well, is that we don't have a massive amount of healing power, so the health recovery is going to play into that as well. And now, how are we going to get that damage? Here is where the damage actually really comes from. We have 8.5k physical penetration on this build. Now, I stacked physical penetration for a good reason, and it's because we're using a lot of sets that proc extra bleeds on our targets, and those bleeds don't have a chance to crit. So I decided to go with physical penetration overall, simply because it'll allow those extra bleeds that I'm getting off my sets to deal more damage, and otherwise there's no other method to increase the damage off them from my build craft perspective outside of champion points. So physical penetration being my damage stat of choice here. This makes this build incredibly good against tanks, incredibly good against anything that's really tanky, heavy armor, heals itself a lot. This is a build that will take it down, and it's because of how much physical penetration we have. So not only do we have this 8.5k base, we're also running piercing mark, so we get almost up to 14k physical penetration on this build. So massive amounts of penetration, and that's going to just eat away at tanks, and you'll see a lot of that in the gameplay, just how we can put some pressure into a tank and they literally can't do anything about it. They just die. So let's take a look at the boons that we have. We've got the Lover as our Mundus, and we went with the Lover for the physical spell penetration that it gives, being something that's going to increase all our dot damage across the board. For the drink that we're actually using the all primary stat recovery drink, and this was a really personal choice. I mean, I was using Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch before. If you guys have used it, it does the same thing that this drink here does, but it gives you max health as well. However, this drink gives you 100 extra regen across the board. So you either take 100 extra regen in all three of your pools, or you get 3k health. That's kind of the trade-off between this drink and Orzorga's. And because we are running Valken Scoria, and we've got a bit of health coming from that, I decided to just say, whatever, let's go for the full regen drink, and you know what? I have not regretted it. The sustain on this build is so great. The health recovery plays into it so well. Just that passive healing tick is so fantastic. I cannot complain, guys, and the regen's a huge part of that. The regen is definitely a huge part of that. For the potions that we're using on the build, we have the standard tri-stat potions. This is going to restore all of our resources by a flat amount, as well as giving us access to all major recoveries. This is a huge deal. This is the potion you need to run on this build, for the reason that it's going to give you massive amounts of sustain all across the board, and those major endurance and major fortitude and major intellect, I mean, those go so far to putting your regens even further and further, allowing this build to really push some crazy sustain in Cyrodiil. So there you have it, guys. I would really recommend you go with the Orc Crest Pale Ale over the Orzorga on this build. I know the low max health can look a little daunting, but trust me, the extra regen is so worth it for this spec. Alright guys, so let's take a peek at those sets. I know you want to see them. On the helmet set, we have Valken Scoria, as you guys, as I mentioned earlier. So this is going to give us max health, and whenever we deal damage with a damage over time effect, it has an 8% chance to summon a meteor that will deal 10k flame damage as well as a 4k AoE. And this is on a 5-second cooldown. Absolutely fantastic set for this build, because we can get it to almost reliably proc. Once we have all 7 dots ticking, we have around a 50% chance per tick for this thing to shoot a meteor down. This means that in your 2 attacks, you're almost guaranteed to see a Valken Scoria meteor show up within the next second or 2. So it absolutely adds to the burst on this build, and it just makes your dots that much more formidable, as well as that max health playing into the fact that we can run the regen drink. So on our bow bar, guys, we have a 5-piece Sheer Venom, max stam, weapon damage, and this is going to put an 11k dot on our Poison Injection, which counts as an execute. So this essentially turns Poison Injection into a double damage over time effect. Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. And then we have the rest of our Sheer Venom in our necklaces and rings, as well as 1 piece of gear here. And then on our dual wield bar, we have a Sheer Venom axe as well. I'm not really sure if your Flying Blade or your dual wield attacks under 25% health can proc Sheer Venom, but I did decide to keep it on this bar simply because I had a Sheer Venom axe, but you don't really need it on this bar. but we do have the 5-piece Viper Sting on this bar, and this is going to give us a 8k bleed every 4 seconds when we deal damage with a melee attack, so this is going to reliably turn our Blood Craze into a double dot as well. On top of it, we have an axe on this bar, so it has a chance, 8% chance of proccing a bleed per attack that hits. And then the rest of our Viper Sting is in our gear here. We've got the jack, the bracers, the legs, and the boots. For the traits on the gear, we've gone kind of all over the place. We have 2 impenetrable, 2 pieces of well fitted, and then we finally have 3 pieces of invigorating. And because this build can take advantage of the health recovery so well, we're on a Nightblade that gets the 15% passive to all its health recoveries. We get the 20% from our potions as well. We have massive amounts of recovery. On this build, we can really take advantage of a trait like Invigorating, which is super sweet. This is a trait I've always wanted to run, so I was excited to put together a build that actually utilized it really well. I absolutely love it. And then finally, for the enchants on the gear, guys, we've gone with all tri-stat glyphs. This is very important, not only to bulk up your max health, but to give you that max magicka pool that'll allow you to pop more cloaks and more shades. Just having a bigger pool of magicka simply means that you're going to have access to more magicka abilities in a row, and that is make or break for PvP. The max health is also super huge. It's great to get the max health here because we are running the drink as well. And then on the rings, guys, we've gone with 2 weapon damage enchants and 1 stamina recovery enchant. And then for our weapons, on the front bar, we have a Nirnhoned axe and a sharpened knife. It should be dual axes, as I mentioned before. And then on the back bar, we have the defending bow. And then for the poisons, guys, we've gone with the damage health poisons. So the double damage health poisons. This is going to deal 2 stacks of poison damage. So it's 2 extra bleeds. And it has a 10-second cooldown, 20% chance to proc off your weapon abilities, and we are using nothing but weapon abilities on this build, minus a gap closer, so there you have it. You'll be proccing these poisons like crazy, and it's just going to add to that crazy dot spam that we have on this spec. So that is the gear, guys. Let's take a look at the skills that we're running. On the dual wield bar, our first ability here is Flying Blade. Now, Flying Blade is here for the major brutality. It's also here to give us access to kind of a ranged spike ability or just a spammable in general. This is the only spammable that we really have on the build. And then also, it is a snare. So part of this build is applying so many not only just damage over time abilities, but negative effects to your target, so that if they try to purge them, they have so many abilities to purge through that it's not really going to get them anywhere. So that's kind of the idea here too, is that this snare that it applies is going to be part of the negative effect spam that we'll put on the target. For the second ability that we have, we've gone with Ambush. Sorry, I had my PvE stuff on the bar there. Ambush is going to be our gap closer, and that's pretty much the only reason we have it. I love this gap closer because it's a teleport. You can use it while you're immobilized, which is kind of a big deal for gap closers, so it can get you out of a snare without having to roll. That's pretty sweet. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I just slotted it for the gap closer. If you don't want to run this build with a gap closer, I would actually recommend putting the Killer's Blade on here, simply because this build doesn't have an execute, and against a very, very tanky target that's healing itself a lot, an execute would be the finishing blow that this build needs to bring it down. That being said, I have yet to come by something I was not able to kill one-on-one with this spec. There's nothing that could tank me out. They either ran away, or they died, or I died. So there you have it. The next ability we have is Blood Craze. This is such an important ability. It's super cheap. It's going to apply that 9k bleed to our target, which is awesome. And then on top of it, it's a melee attack, so it can also apply our Viper Sting bleed too. It will also heal us a little bit of health every 2 seconds for the duration. So this is playing into the sustain a little bit more here. We get a little bit of healing off this Blood Craze, and you can expect it to be up pretty much all the time, simply because this is an attack that you're going to be using very, very often. I would say that Blood Craze, Poison Injection are your primary attacks on this build, and everything else is secondary to that. So the next ability we have is Relentless Focus. This is going to give us access to Minor Berserk, 8% more damage, absolutely fantastic. On top of it, we get 10% stamina recovery, playing into that super regen spec that we're playing as well. And also we get to activate Assassin's Scourge, and this is going to be a nice little bit of spike damage. This is the hardest spike damage hit that we have on the spec by far. which is pretty sweet, but it's not going to hit super hard because we're not playing a spec that really hits hard in that kind of way. The big play on this build is the damage over time. That's really where this build's damage shines, so let's move on. We have Piercing Mark. Now, this is here for a few reasons. First off, we have that debuff that's going to give them both Major Breach and Major Fracture, reducing their physical and spell resist by 5.2k. That's massive. This is going to affect all of our bleeds as well as our Valken Scoria. So even on the spell penetration side, we have like 8k spell penetration on this build for Valken Scoria. Very, very sweet. On top of it, this is going to detect the target, making it so if they re-enter stealth, you can see them. Now, something I want to say is that this does not suppress their stealth from preventing your dots from doing damage. So if you dot a Nightblade up and you mark them and they go into stealth, you can still see them, but your dots won't deal damage until you go and physically break their cloak. So it's just a little bit of a tip when you're fighting other Nightblades. And then finally, it gives you a little bit of a heal if you take the target down. This is actually a pretty sweet heal. You can almost use it reliably because you're pretty much going to be marking most of the targets you take down, unless they're really squishy and they just go down to your injection blood craze, then you'll mark them and get a pretty beefy heal after. So it does come in handy in that aspect as well. And for the ultimate on the dual wield bar, we have gone with our dual wield ultimate, Lacerate. Now, you can go with actually either morph here. I kind of mulled over which morph would be better. I think for myself, I want to go with Rend because it gives the double duration. And the double duration is going to be OP simply for survivability. This ultimate not only deals this massive amount, this 41k damage over time, but it heals you for half the damage it does. And we are playing a penetration build, which is actually going to make the healing really strong off this ultimate, so that's really sweet. But the Thrive in Chaos morph is going to give us up to 30% bonus damage to that target for the duration of this ultimate. So, and that's every target hit, so that's a huge deal. I mean, if you hit like 6 targets with Thrive in Chaos, every single bleed that you have on them is now going to tick for 30% more damage. Just a little bit to think about how much you can bleed burst with an ultimate like this if you choose to go with this morph. But part of this build too is that we do have an ultimate on our back bar that's going to do a similar thing. So I think that Rend overall is the better ultimate for survivability. Thrive in Chaos if you want to deal some serious AoE dot damage to a group of players. And then on our bow bar, we have Poison Injection as our first ability. I'm sure you guys saw this coming. Poison Injection here, of course, because it's going to proc the Sheer Venom bleed as well. So we have 2 damage over times coming from the Poison Injection. And then on top of it, this is going to be a part of your Execute. It's going to deal massive amounts more damage once your opponent's health begins to drop below 50%. So it's going to help you finish those opponents off. The next ability that we have is Lethal Arrow. So this plays into the condition spam where we put a lot of negative effects on the target. We have got just a 9k tooltip. It's quite weak. It's not going to hit really hard. The big reason we have this here is for that Major Defile. I mean, it's a nice little bit of burst, but that Major Defile, 33% less healing and health recovery. On a damage over time spec, something like Major Defile is such a huge deal. Debuffing your opponent all around is a massive part of getting your dots to deal the damage you want them to deal. And this is going to be an absolutely fantastic ability for that. Not only that, but a Nightblade can really utilize Lethal Arrow even in a heated fight because they have Cloak. You can cloak up and then go right into a Lethal Arrow. Even if they block it and it does no damage to them, just getting that Major Defile is going to be a huge deal for you. And then finally, we have our heal on this build, Resolving Vigor, and it has a low tooltip. We have a 10k tooltip on this. That's super low, guys. I mean, we've played builds in the past with like 15 to 20k Vigor tooltips. Now we're at 10k. So that's why we have so much health recovery on this build, because we absolutely need it. Without it, we don't have the healing power that we need just from Vigor alone. But with it and Vigor, we can actually pull quite a bit of survivability. And then, of course, we have our dual wield bar to bleed people up and drain some health if we need to go that route as well for even more healing power. The next ability that we have is Shadow Image, and this is an absolute must. Now, I know some people might not like using Shade. I'd recommend you start trying to use it in PvP. The teleport on it is so strong. You put a Shade down, not only does it minor maim the target so they deal less damage to you, but you can teleport back to it at any moment, as long as you don't go too far away from it. So there you have it. It's so strong. It's so great for getting out of any kind of snare spam, any terrible situation. Pretty much what you do is you put the Shade down before you engage, and then you engage in the fight. Something goes wrong, you Shade out, put a new Shade down, re-engage. And it's that simple. It makes it so easy to stay alive on a stamblade. And, well, not even just a stamblade, any Nightblade build. Shade is so great. And then, of course, that minor maim is awesome as well. Just playing into that condition spam, as well as just reducing their damage. And then finally, we have Dark Cloak. This is going to give us minor protection, which is going to make us even tankier. The Crit Cloak is a terrible option for this build. It only increases the crit damage of one ability out of stealth. It will not make all your dots crit unendingly. I'm sorry. It used to work like that a long time ago, but it doesn't anymore. But Cloak is here for that stealth, man. Stealth's so powerful in PvP. You can get your stealth suppressed through detects and getting marked, etc. And that's where good Shade gameplay really comes into play. I mean, you have to be able to use your Shade to get out of those bad situations, especially when you're marked. And then finally, guys, on the bow bar, we have our only stun, very surprisingly, and a strange alt to slot on your bow bar, Incapacitating Strike. Now, we have this on the bow bar for a couple reasons. Number one, this is not a burst spec. Our incap doesn't hit very hard anyway, so we're not relying on it for that burst anyhow. Number two, this is access to our stun pretty much, and you don't really need a stun on this build. A lot of the times, if you just properly debuff your opponent, they can pound heals and they'll just die from your dots anyway. They will not be able to out heal it. But the stun, of course, is to make sure you can close in on that kill against maybe a sticklier target. And not only is this a great stun for closing in on a damage over time kill, it's great for just setting up a damage over time kill anyway. We have got Major Defile when you use this ability, so the same as Snipe there, so you don't need to go with a Snipe if you're going in with an incap. And then on top of it, look at this. It increases our damage against them by 20% for 6 seconds. The exact same thing that the other dual wield morph did. 20% bonus damage over that 6-second period right after your stun. I mean, poison injection, blood craze into an incap, and then a heavy attack into a flying blade, and you can almost reliably see the dots just eat them away from that combo. There's so much damage going out, and I don't know. I don't know what to say. Incap is just absolutely perfect for a damage over time spec, and it's not something I really expected. I thought that this was like the perfect spike alt for a burst Nightblade build. I take it back. This is the best alt all around. Even a damage over time spec is great using incap. So there you have it, guys. Absolutely recommend this alt. Super great. Now let's take a look at the champion points. Let's start in the green tree. We have 7 Warlord and 3 in Sprinter. Very few points in this tree. Got to break free and you got to sprint though, so a few points in there. And then in the Lover tree, we have a super stacked Lover tree, as you guys can see here. 56 Mooncalf, 49 Arcanist, 37 Healthy. We're playing a massive regen spec, so we stack the crap out of this Lover tree, and that is exactly what I'd recommend you guys do if you want to try this spec out. Let's take a look at the Shadow tree. We've got 51 Tumbling, 16 in Shadow Ward, and 11 in Befoul. So we've got a roll dodge, and we focused heavily on that because it's a huge part of our survivability. Shadow Ward, we do have to block occasionally, but we're not going to do it that often. And then finally, Befoul. I actually didn't decide to put a huge amount of points in here. It does make your healing debuff better, but we're only running 1 heal debuff, and the sustain and survivability is arguably more important than that little bit of extra damage that this will give me, or extra kill potential, sorry. So there you have it, guys. Let's move on to the blue tree. We have 11 in Elemental Expert and 3 in Spell Erosion. Now, this is just for Valken Scoria and to get a little bit of that Vengeance passive, even though it does nothing for our build. But a little bit of Valken Scoria buff there with a few extra points. In the Atronach tree, As you can see, I also put very few points. 1 Shattering Blow, 11 Physical Weapon Expert, and 18 Master at Arms. Very little focus here just to bulk up the few skills that we have that are going to deal direct damage, and that's about it. We wanted access to that Riposte as well, 15% chance on block. I do like this passive. It does help in some weird times, so there you have it. But for the most part, yeah, very few points there. Not a lot of focus. And then we check out the ritual tree, and this is stacked as hell. Oh my god, look at this tree. 61 Thaum, 56 Mighty, 58 Piercing, 11 Precise Strikes. We have almost all our points in the ritual tree. Now, I know what we could have done is gone Tactician for the off-balance into Exploiter to get that off-balance passive on our dodge rolls. But I thought about that, and I was like, but then we're missing out on putting so many points into Thaum. Putting points into here is going to do absolutely nothing for our damage over time, unless we go for a weird spec that's only good against damage shields, and we're not even playing a heavy crit spec, so we're already fairly effective against damage shields to begin with. I decided, frig that, let's move over, let's throw all our points in the ritual tree, and you know what, I can honestly say I think this is actually better damage. You get the 10% here, but honestly, I think you miss out on over 10% of damage statistics over here if you dump all those points over there. But here we have it, 21% bonus damage over time, absolutely massive. It's a dot build. What do you expect? And then we've got a ton of Mighty and Piercing because this is going to affect all of our damage over time abilities as well and make us penetrate that armor better. And then finally, we have a little bit in Precise Strikes because we have a few dots that can crit and we didn't want to neglect them. And a pretty sweet passive here as well as Last Stand. This is a squishier build, so you can expect chunks of your health to be torn away, and you can expect to drop below 20% health every now and then. This is a sweet passive to get. I mean, 8 seconds of major heroism is huge. That's a major, major change. That's the difference between a stun 10 seconds from now and a stun right now, you know? So, great passive that we get access to by dumping so many points in the tree. And then let's take a look at our red tree, guys. We have a similar super heavy focus on the steed here. 61 Ironclad, 77 in resistant. I went absolutely ham on critical resistance here. Maybe take a few points out of that, put him into spell shield, medium armor focus. But I don't want to do it right now. I don't know. Maybe put like take 10 or 15 points and then split it up between these two. But anyway, super heavy Stark tree here. Super big focus on reducing our direct damage attacks and our critical damage that we take. And then we've got a pretty nice spread here, 19, 19, 16. Not a lot of focus on the dots. We do have Cloak to suppress the damage over time. And then, of course, this is just going to bulk up our defenses all around. And then 23 in Quick Recovery for that healing taken. And there you are, guys. Hello guys, and welcome to the PvP commentary. Just letting you guys know that I do stream live, and I do stream these builds live, like, before I upload any of the build content. So if you want a sneak peek at what I'm up to before it shows up on the YouTube channel, you can see it on my Twitch channel, and you guys can always come just talk and chat with me. Links to my Twitch channel, of course, is in the video description. Let's jump into it. Here we have our fight. So as you can see, we killed the first player there, and he was pretty squishy. He just kind of went down to the mad dot burst, and then we kite out back here. This guy comes around the corner. We put a quick poison injection into him, a heavy attack into the blood craze, and then a stun, and it's a lot of damage. I mean, the dot ticks don't even hit. They don't even get to tick that hard on him before he's dead, but this guy here, you can see just the bleeds melt him. Poison injection, blood craze. So much damage on that guy. So that's kind of how this Nightblade's going to be played. Your Poison Injection and Blood Craze are kind of your main spammable skills. You want to keep any target that you want to kill heavily dotted up with both those skills at all times. And there you see it again. We do the Poison Injection, the Blood Craze, and then we follow it up with the in-cap stun to seal the deal. 20% extra damage on the ticks after the in-cap comes down. So in the next fight here, we're in a tower yet again, and you can see we're picking a fight with a tankier DK. We dot him up a bit, and we're just going to play our kite game here. As you can see, he jumps off the edge, and he survives. He doesn't die. He takes quite a bit of damage. Too many ticks for him. He decides to get out of there. There's quite a few reds here, so I'm just playing the kite game here too, running around, being a little trolly, making sure to keep my shade down. Shade, of course, is going to be my saving grace in here when something goes wrong. It'll make sure I don't get wrecked. So Here you can see we reset the shade on these guys as they kind of become aware of my location. I'm going to run around the corner, shade back to where I was. Now I only have one player to kind of deal with, and second one comes around the corner, throwing the rocks at me. I dropped another shade, and I teleport right back behind them as they run down the staircase, and then I'm going to hit them with a cloak this time and pass through them yet again, resetting the fight. And this fight here is a real good showcase of the kite and the maneuverability that you have on this build. It's really hard to take down, you know, a spec like this if you play it right inside a tower. People have a lot of trouble locking you down. Here you see the guy comes by himself. He underestimates the damage because I just go by the poison injection, the blood craze. It's not a lot of upfront damage. They don't really notice it. I fully dot him up and then bring him down with the stun yet again. So we put a bit of pressure into that Templar. We do mark him as well. You want to make sure when you fight things like a Templar or anything that is going to be using Purge, make sure to put marks on them, because the mark is going to prevent them from purging your damage as well, and of course it'll debuff them, but the mark is just a big condition spam. That's the big deal. Here you see I catch this guy alone in the corner. We dot him up really heavy. We throw the in-cap down on him, and here you can see his health just ticking away. We just keep putting the pressure on him, not really hitting him with anything really spiky, just making sure to keep the dots on him, and he melts away. He can't do anything about it. This guy here is just kind of waiting and looking. We go for an ambush to get up here with him. He goes for the javelin and knocks me down right away. I make sure to chug my pot as I hit the ground, because I didn't want to get killed by fall damage there. That might have been his intent, knocking me off the edge too. But we end up surviving, and I come back around the corner here. The guy up top's looking at me. He's thinking about jumping down. Here comes the guy around the corner. Comes swinging. We throw the poison injection in him. There's the blood craze. We mark him right away. There's no visual effect on that mark there, unfortunately. And we get stunned by the Templar, and off the edge we go. Unfortunately, the shade had expired, so I couldn't port back up, which kind of sucks. So we're just going to have to go stealth and just come right back in onto this enemy resource. I am on DC, so you guys will see me killing some reds. I'm sorry. I know I don't normally do that, but we re-engage with these guys. You see the dot up there. We go for the incapacitating strike. He takes a lot of damage. Just the dots there finish off the last third of his hit points, and he ends up going down. And now we're going to play with these guys here. So we've got two players, one fairly dotted up. Here you see just some crazy kite game. I'm just kind of like whipping out the ambush teleport at the right time, trying to just throw these guys off so I can just keep hitting them with those little attacks. Make sure I got the one DK I'm targeting there, and I'm making sure to put a lot of pressure into him just by making sure to rotate the bleeds, keep him debuffed, make sure I keep my shade on him as well, make it really hard for him to do anything when he starts to lose his health, make it very hard for anyone to even heal his health back. Here you can see there's going to be healing wards thrown on this guy, and my dots are just melting them away. And this guy here, he's pounding his own heals. The other player's pounding healing wards on him. And this is where you see the real power of this build. If you just use these simple attacks, you can apply so much pressure to these players, and it just results in them expending way more resources than they should trying to take care of you. There you see those two players just spent the entire time healing each other up, allowing me to come back, quickly dot this other Templar up, and finish him with a nasty, nasty combo. And then I turn on the DK he just rezzed. Unfortunately, the DK gets a nice beefy heal. The other players have decided to come around the corner and re-engage with me, noticing that I have quit attacking them over there. But we're relatively safe. We see a lower HP target. We go for the stun, hoping to follow with some dots. Take a really nasty stun there. I roll through the door and then come back through to change directions, cloak and go out the window here. And then I make the judgment call. Maybe this is the time to get out of here. We're attracting a lot of attention. And there you have it. Let's move on to the next clip. Okay, so we are on our horse. As you can see, there's a nice big yellow Zerg at the door waiting for us. We just get knocked off. We actually survived the hit, and I managed to cloak out and get away. Throw a couple of arrows into these guys, but they run right back to their group. So what are we going to do? The Zerg snipes. Here we go. We go for the dot snipe, and the ballista comes down, but I think we would have sealed the kill for sure, even without the ballista. I don't even think she took damage from it, but there you see, beautiful little burst on a very, very squishy target, and we come right back around, and we're just going to kind of tickle the outside here, see what we can do. But be careful as well. Looks like another DC player has jumped in. Looks very tanky. Just kind of sitting in the middle of them, not even worrying. We pick out our target here, throw the dual-wield ultimate on him as well. There you see the massive amount of damage. We've got him totally dotted up with everything, but they are healing the crap out of each other. So he ends up not dying, but as you can see, it forces the player to go back, which kind of forces an opening or creates a bit of an opening for me to have somewhat of an escape here. But you can see these guys are starting to lock me down, and we get a warden on top of us, making sure to keep us frozen. And here comes the rest of the Zerg. We go to this tree, and we take our shade right back to the stump. Literally nothing left in the tank. I mean, that shade was the saving grace. We pull a quick double stealth around the rock there, get the potion off, the dodge roll into stealth. Look at the sustain on that. I mean, that looked like it was over, but we just managed to pull right back through. Go for a gank on this guy here. We go for our snipe into poison injection, and he ends up going down from the dots. Another player, another DC player here ends up trying to go for some ganks too, but I think he ended up missing. The other player was roll dodging, and there's just another example of how powerful the dot gameplay can be against different kinds of combat. Look at something that's dotted up and it's rolling. It's still going to take the damage from the dots and just die. So rolling wasn't necessarily the best bet there. But there you see we engage with this Sork here. Very smart engage from the Sork to roll dodge right off the bat. But we dot him up real heavy. He ends up retreating. The Templar puts some pressure into us. We just do a quick kite around the tree there and re-engage with this Templar here, putting some good pressure into him, making sure to keep him dotted up. He goes for the purge, and we just put our conditions right back on top of him. You don't give him a second, and he ends up melting right away. And there you have it. Little bit of kite gameplay. Let's move on to the next clip. Little bit of a Zerg snip here. Here you can see we poison injection him up, go for the ambush into the blood craze, and we stealth up. By the time we turn around, his body has already hit the floor. So much burst damage. Isn't that incredible? So we pick our next target here. We dot him up as he goes into a friendly player's ultimate, and we jump in on top of him to ensure the kill and finish him off there. Reset our shade to make sure we have a port coming out, and then re-engage with this group of players here. I go for this player in the back here. I end up dotting him pretty nicely. You see I get the blood craze off. There's the poison injection. You see the Valken Scoria coming down. Actually quite a lot of damage going into that guy, but I don't think he actually dies. There he is, still taking the damage. We managed to get out of that sticky situation thanks to the shade, and then we come right back in. I should have actually reset my shade coming in, but seeing that these guys are starting to crumble and our opportunity to turn the tide of this fight has arisen, we decide to put some pressure into them, and lo and behold, here comes some DC reinforcements. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Good example of how effective the shade can be at just saving your life on this build. Such a great defensive skill. So for this clip here, we have a little bit of a 2v1. So we're going to start by putting the shade down on the NPC, running around the corner, and then just shading in behind this other player here. So we're going to start by throwing them off right off the bat and make sure that they're going to have a tough time keeping us locked down. So we go for this snipe out of our cloak here into poison injection, right into the blood craze, into the stun. Oh my gosh, we even throw the mark on him. So much damage into that Templar. He ends up purging and healing his ways away, and I think he ends up just actually jumping off the edge. So we switch focus to the Sork here, and we dot her up right away. Try to get that snipe on her. Unfortunately, I'm having a lot of trouble landing it. Here you see she's going for her ultimate, and as soon as her soul assault's done, I follow up with my in-cap to stun her right away. Now, I was hoping to maybe get the kill off the dots I had on her there, but unfortunately, she survives it. I think she actually grabs a purge from the Templar there and ends up being totally fine from the dots. But kind of went for it there. This Sork's got a lot of HP and a lot of moves that are going to pull me out of stealth, so it's going to be very annoying to fight her next to an AoE-based Templar. I mean, jabs is so tough to deal with on a Nightblade, so there you have it. We keep playing with this Sork, dancing around her, continuing to put the dots on her, and as you can see, it's a lot of pressure, and the Templar is still looking for me too. We're continuing to stay really mobile. And that's kind of another big advantage that we have playing the dot build, is that we don't have to be on top of our target the whole time. to be dealing a lot of damage to them. We just have to make sure that we come back to them every few seconds and drop a quick rotation on them so they continue to tick away, and we wear that Sork down, catch her by herself, and take her down. And now we're left to fight this Templar alone. He goes for that meteor there, goes for like the suicide play, almost kills himself there. And as you can see, can't really do anything. He blows through all his resources trying to heal, trying to out-purge it. But in the end, it's just too much pressure, and he goes down from it. And now let's do some shade gameplay. I think this is some trolly shade gameplay here. So we engage with these guys here, go on the Dragon Knight, end up dumping a lot of damage over time on him. But he's very, very tanky, so we decide to just quickly back up, knowing that there's, 6 players there looking for me. So here we go. Let's play some Nightblade with them. So we're going to just do the simple thing. We're going to throw the shade down right away and engage with these guys. So they're going to run past the shade. So the teleport behind them is the inevitable bet of the play that we're going to make here. So pretty much what's happening is I'm going to engage with these guys as long as I feel safe doing it. And then once I feel like it's too much pressure, there it is. We're going to port out, and then we're going to reset the fight. And what this does is it pulls the group apart, and you're just kind of going off the varying speeds of the players. I mean, some players are going to get to you faster than others, and it allows you to lower the chance of you getting one-banged or taken down. There you see we go for a shade and pop it on the guy, run up the hill, teleport in behind him, and then try to get away. We do the same thing there. We pop the shade at the base of the rocks, teleport behind them yet again, and now we have, I think it's like 8+ players here, completely spread out. I mean, we got just one DK on top of me here. No worries at all. So we end up doing the same thing to the DK. We shade in behind him, troll him a little bit, shade back to the rocks, and as you can see, we're still in not really a super threatening situation. There you see we have a lot of players come around the corner, shade right back down. Beautiful play. There's like 10-15 players there, and now we see the shade fails. Oh no, that was so critical. So critical. We had the pot coming up as well. I mean, we would have had full resources, but no, the shade fail. We end up getting caught out of position. Too bad, too bad. Maybe Zenny will fix it one day. Now let's look at a little bit of 1vx, guys. So here we are engaging with some EP players from Stealth. One of them pops out. Lower level player. We just put a poison injection to him, and that is it. He goes down from a poison injection. Have you ever seen it before? So here you can see I mark up this other Nightblade so he can't get in stealth and put some serious dot pressure into him. He really just doesn't even respond. He just kind of like watches his health bar go away, and that's it. The other player that I'd killed earlier gets res, so I just quickly bring him down again, and now I run back to fight these two EP here. So it looks like we've got 2 Dragon Knights, 2 Magicka Dragon Knights, and that is something that's especially annoying to fight, I think, on a Nightblade, a Magicka Dragon Knight. Just actually Magicka classes in general, fairly hard to deal with when they've got a lot of access to AoE. But there you can see we managed to really dot that DK up. He does not expect it to come, and then we hit him with the stun, and bam, just a few dot ticks and he goes down. And then we're left to fight this other DK here. And here you see Shade, unfortunately, just failing me super hard. This patch, Shade is just kind of crappy. I don't know what to say. I find that if it fails you and you just let it go for its full duration and refresh, then it might work. And that's pretty much it. ZeniMax claims to have a fix next patch. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Anyhow, we continue to fight this Dragon Knight, and he's playing really, really well. Of course, we're getting trolled super hard by the Shade. It's not working when we need it to work, so we're just teleporting to nowhereness, which is a little deadly, but hey, that's how it goes. There you see the teleport, and then it just puts me right back into his AoE, which is not what I need. But we continue to fight this guy. Make sure to keep him marked at all times. The debuff here is huge. I mean, that's 8% more damage. Here you see when I need Shade to work, it does. Look how many misses there were. I was dotted up super heavy, HP really low. If Shade had failed me there, that would have been it. But we managed to get out of there. We re-engage with the Nightblade that has come to res this guy here. The Dragon Knight on the end seems to be non-aggressive now. He doesn't seem to want to fight. But this Nightblade here is trying to res my dead, and then comes another EP player as well. So we're going to re-engage, and I managed to get a markdown on the Nightblade, which is awesome. This is going to give me the edge on him. A little bit of a skip there, as we did have to hit the record button. And then we re-engage here. This guy's going for the res. I try to get the bash at the last second, but I don't manage to. Fortunately, though, I dot him up really heavy. Go for the stun as well. End up missing. Doesn't matter. Dots end up finishing him off. And then we're going to finish off our next target here as he continues to heal himself. Oh, no. This is another DK coming in. Try to res the guy we just killed. Look at that, though. We just do one poison injection, one blood craze. He just melts city. And then we are left with these two guys here, but they don't really want to duke it out. We seem to have gone from fighting to becoming friends, which is absolutely fantastic. Well, that is the end of the build video. Just a little bit of a gank clip left for you guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Just a quick shout out to our sponsor, What the Fast, a VPN for gamers. If you guys have crappy ping and you want to make it not crappy, maybe a VPN is what you need. So if you guys want to try this service out, it is free to try in the link below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and have a fantastic night, everybody.